Hi, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Abercrombie, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you all too. So, like many before me, I am also a lifelong Belmont resident, though that's for a few years shorter, I should think. I went to Belmont's public schools for 13 years. I live on Wynn Street, and in that time, I walked, I biked, I took the bus, and when the weather was particularly awful, I sometimes managed to get a ride from my friend or my parents, but never in those 13 years did I use a parking space. And I've probably breathed in more engine fumes than I put out into the air over those 13 years. Belmont has a very limited amount of woodland habitat for the many animals and plants that call New England home. And I've enjoyed, so many walks in the beautiful conservation land we have, like Lone Tree Hill, Mass Audubon's habitat. I'm proud of the biodiversity that we have in that conservation land, but that is supported not just by that land itself, but also by the fact that that wildlife has many other wooded areas and not just, some trees somewhere in a little patch, but these need to be continuous, dense wooded areas. When we talk about cutting down 1.7 acres, that affects the other 7 acres on that property. So we are impacting the level of support that can come from those 7 acres to our overall ecosystem here in Belmont. I want to make sure that we're also considering the effect of induced demand. And I think a few other people mentioned that. But when we bring student offsite parking back onto the campus, we're taking away the cost of that significant walk. When a student wants to park, they have to make that consideration. I want to make that walk. I'm not going to bike because I can drive and I can walk from this offsite parking lot. When we take away that cost to students, that encourages them. When we take away some of the cost of fighting for a parking permit, because it looks like this plan does include potentially more parking permits for students, that again encourages students to drive. At Belmont High School, I showed up on the first day of classes last year to the new school, and our bike racks were completely packed. I had to lock my bike to a sign on the street. The next day, we were down to barely meeting the capacity of those bike racks because the effect of induced demand is so strong that by not having enough spots for bikes on the first day, we got rid of a significant number of students who wanted to bike. When we look at Belmont Hill School, we should be asking, is the educational purpose here to educate students on the importance of seeking out alternative transit and living their lives in a sustainable way? Or is it an educational purpose that, if you go to a nice private school on the hill, you can figure out how to drive and the town's going to deal with it? I don't think that's a lesson we want to be teaching kids. Encouraging people to drive is not good for Belmont's roads, Belmont's air, or Belmont's pedestrians, or, and this is important, Belmont Hills students. I know the environment is something that this board routinely has to weigh against the housing or economic implications of projects. However, this case is significantly different in that the Belmont Hill School project is seeking to harm our environment, not for the sake of building more housing or improving our economic growth, but to encourage its students to further harm the environment. And I think that's really key here. I also want to note that if we are looking at this as something where we are limited by state law, and that is a very important factor, we do have two excellent legislators who are representing this town, and I think it would be worth a lot of the people who are here in attendance today reaching out to those legislators to see if there's a state level solution to this.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Abercrombie, I think that last point with me resonated the most, which is for those who don't think that educational institutions should be tax exempt, or who don't think who think the Dover Amendment is outdated and shouldn't be applied. The correct solution to that is Will Brownsberger and Dave Rogers, who are our state rep and our state senator, because they're the ones who change they're the ones who can change the statutes. We're not supposed to do that. Somebody commented, I guess a question I would have for you, Mr. Abercrombie, is how far do you live from the Belmont High School?
So for me, I live a pretty reasonably, I think it's about a mile biking from Belmont High School, but I also bike to Chenery, which is up a pretty significant hill, like the ones that I know students at Belmont Hill School would face biking. And, I've biked the actual hill up to Belmont Hill to go to other events a couple times. And it's not always fun, but, it keeps me in shape. And I think that's something that we want to encourage.
Understood. Thank you very much, Mr. Abercrombie. Okay, so